Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to yet again another exciting episode of Jacob Walks Over a Bridge. I'm Jacob. I'm currently approaching the bridge that I'm going to be walking over, and if you didn't know, today is going to be a day. Certainly a day. For those of you who don't know my recording schedule, I don't know my recording schedule, but today is November 3rd, 2020, otherwise known as Election Day. Now, this has been building up for a long time. Seems like everyone's been waiting for this day since the last election day, and as I imagine we'll be awaiting the 2024 election just as quickly. It's been a long ride. I've already voted. I made sure to vote early, though my aversion to lines kept me from voting early until the last day of early voting, when pretty much everyone who already voted early or wanted to vote early had already voted early, which meant that I could vote early with little fanfare and almost no line at all. I was in and out, and I got to do my civic patriotic duty. What is patriotism these days? It's hard to tell. But I'm not going to speak to you over the whole length of the Manhattan Bridge about politics or the election or anything like that, or any other thorns in my side like the subway. But on that note, sorry I burped. Speaking of thorns in my side and things I love dearly, it's time to talk about my beloved New York Mets. The Mets of New York Town. Now, I know that this team has not been relevant for the last couple months or the last few years or decade. I could self-deprecate the team all I want, but things haven't always been rosy for the Mets. They were stricken, some would say cursed, with a bad ownership group that led to poor management that just led to poor decisions, oftentimes coming from the top down. The poor management group was often in charge of making decisions that other competent people should have been making. So that often left the team hamstrung, oftentimes with hamstring injuries. But the latest current events surrounding the team are that they were bought outright, or almost outright. I think they left the Wilpon family with a nice little 5% stake to see him off, but for, I think, 95% of the team now, or close to that, is now owned by one Steve Cohen, or as the internet's calling him, Uncle Stevie. Now, I am extremely excited for this because, honestly, I never thought I'd see the day when the team would be sold. I, like everyone else, was always lamenting the especially after the Wilpons got caught up in a Madoff scandal, and that still didn't make them sell the team. They weren't forced to sell the team like other owners were sold their teams when they were in scandals. So I thought that the Mets were immune to such oversight. But I guess they finally were. It's been a while since I've really looked into why they sold. There were reasons, I know, but it's nice to know that it's finally happened. I remember years back just kind of Googling or Binging, as I often do, the Wilpon lineage, because, first you had Fred Wilpon, who initially was the one who bought the team, and then you had his son, Jeff, who was put in charge of things that he definitely should not have been in charge of as a glorified man-child, which often seems to be the case with, you have the children of important people aren't often as competent as the important people they are the spawn of. But with the Wilpons, I was looking up who the next in line, did Jeff have any kids that would ultimately mess up the team when I was, in my 50s or 60s. And he has a son who I think played baseball, and then there were even some curious moves the Mets have made lately when they tried to acquire bad players who had played with Jeff's son, who I guess, through the grapevine, we're like, hey, he's telling his general manager to pick up his son's friend to play on his team as a favor. You don't want a baseball team run by favors, because they rarely ever work out. Maybe Mike Piazza's the one exception, but you often don't want to have a team that's run by people not making moves that are in the best interest of the team itself, which is what often was the case with the Mets. But and Steve Cohen isn't without his faults. He might have $11 billion now, but you don't become a billionaire by being nice. That's for sure. You step on toes, you take advantage of people, and I'm not one of those people that's screaming from the rooftops to redistribute wealth and to, calling for, all that other stuff. But sometimes it's a little hard to swallow that I too may never, I guess maybe not me too, but in contrast, there is unless this podcast takes off and makes me a billionaire, which not likely, but I will never have the chance to even think about owning even a minor stake in a baseball team, considering the entry cost. That's the N train. Good times on the N train. But the focus of Steve Cohen early on seems to be to, I was going to say also that, he also was almost charged with some federal crimes, which Mayor de Blasio almost used to create some drama to keep him from buying the team, based on, because Citi Field's on public land and the city has the obligation to review the purchase because blah, 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 legal stuff. It was just a lot of showboating to make him seem like he cared about people more than he actually did, in my opinion. You can tell I'm not really a de Blasio fan. I don't think any mayor has many fans. There's a meme that, it's a tradition for, excuse me, I burped again. Tradition for, like let's say opening day, the mayor comes out to throw the first pitch and he gets booed. No matter who he is, what party, how long he's been in office, he just, it's tradition. But, de Blasio almost threw a wrench in the whole thing, which would have made everyone unhappy. But he didn't, and Steve Cohen now has what seems to be an unending supply of money to throw at the team, which is it's in stark contrast to how the team used to be run. I'm especially excited for his emphasis on, well, first off, spending money. That's, when the Wilpons got caught up in the Madoff scandal. They were on the negatives. They were one of the few people who were benefiting from this pyramid scheme, and they had to pay off a lot of money for that. I think they still might be paying off settlements and other case-related issues. So that's what also is keeping the team from spending like they should in what we would call a big market city, which is New York. But of course, he has spending money, but also seems to be focused on analytics, which the other previous owners, which is nice to say, the previous owners were not as keen to invest in. So it'll be nice to see the team run well and spending well. They also have the advantage that the new owner hadn't lost any money this season like every other owner in baseball has. These trains are loud. I don't know if it's just louder because I have headphones in and there's not much else I'm hearing. Wow, yeah. I mean, there's so few people on this bridge today. It's a Tuesday morning. Most people, I guess, are at work. My office has off. I was going to take this day off anyway, just for the stress, de-stress. It's hard to focus when there's so much going on. But now I've slipped my mask down a little bit. You may notice you can hear me a little better. I'm trying to remember what it feels like to feel the wind on my face. I'll flip it up when someone walks by. But there's very few people around me right now. But this has me as excited for the Mets as probably since I almost ever have. Probably since before I was knowledgeable enough or devoted enough to actually hear about who owned the team. I probably was, say maybe 2006 was the first year that I seriously followed baseball. Up to that point, I was a kid. You like watching the game every now and then. It was fun to watch. I was too young to understand scoreboard watching and looking at the standings, analyzing, how many games you need to win to pass this team to make it to the wild card. This isn't calculus, but, when you're 10 years old and, with parents who aren't diehards themselves, you have to, older siblings who are diehard, you have to teach yourself a lot of stuff, which I ended up doing. 2006, I was at summer camp, and, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have access to the internet, computers, whatever, but parents could email you, and the camp would print out whatever, got emailed to you and given to you every day as your mail call. And I had my dad email me the box score of every game the Mets were playing, even though I had a pocket radio that I brought with me to listen to the games themselves, but I still had him send it, the box score, and it was, don't know what site he was sending it from, but they had analytics, they had write-ups, they had, people, whoever was writing it was analyzing the results of the game, key moments, that sort of thing, how it impacted how the team would play going forward. So that's when 2006, I would say, was the turning point, which probably no coincidence was, the Mets were good that year. They ran away with everything. They were one pitch away from going to the World Series, so that was a good team, and it's easy to fall in love with a good team. The Mets were famously bad for so long, but they were the lovable losers, but you could be lovable winners. That's also another thing that people are complaining about, or finding things to complain about with Steve Cohen, that are the Mets going to be lovable anymore? Now if they become the Yankees or the East Coast Dodgers, are people going to care as much? Are people going to still come to the games? Are they still going to like the team? What were you going to the games for before? It was always kind of, fun in its own little way to watch the team lose 13-1 and watch the backup catcher pitch an inning. Like, there's some, there's some funny things. It was funny, sure, but that's not really, that's not what makes the team money, but also, you want the team to win. I like to joke that one of the reasons why I eventually switched over, I was a Yankee fan once upon a time, and then one of the reasons that I switched from being a Yankee fan to a Mets fan was that to be a Mets fan, the victories were sweeter and the losses didn't hurt as much, whereas the Yankees, who have not had a losing season in my lifetime, which continues to be true year after year, not only, I won't say that winning probably gets boring, especially if you're a Yankee fan proper, but, the losses hurt more, because you don't expect it. With the Mets, it's like, they might win today. It's likely they won't, but I'm just going to go enjoy the game. And, they've got some good pieces every year, and you find the people to root for. Like one of the team's not worst years, but certainly not their best year in the last decade was the 2012, and everyone still found something to root for with R.A. Dickey winning the Cy Young that year. I know that was a big year for the 7 line, the Mets fan group, and that's only grown, especially in the years when the Mets just haven't been good. But it just makes, I guess to that end, maybe the wins, if the Mets became a perennial championship contending team or winning every year, yes, maybe it would turn to be more like the Yankees when the wins won't be as sweet and the losses will sting a little more, but for the chance to be in the World Series every year, I think I'll take that. I'll take that trade-off. As a older fan now compared to my youth when I first was watching the team, I'd like to see them win once in my lifetime. There are no Cubs yet. They haven't. The Mets have only been to the World Series twice in my lifetime. Only once when I was actually a fan of the team. 2015 was special. I'll say that. So many things happened to me in 2015. Graduated college, got a new job. Mets went to the World Series. That's up there because how rare of an occasion that was. That is one of the highlights of my life from 2015. It's up there with graduating college just because that was a once-in-a-lifetime event. They obviously didn't win that year, which would have made things all the more sweeter in 2015, much more memorable. But what are you going to do? I guess just keep being a fan. It's just, words are hard, especially when you're trying to just talk about this stuff on the spot. I knew I was going to talk about the Mets, just not for what, I just didn't know exactly what I was going to talk about. But the Mets, like the bagel episode, they're very easy to talk about for a long time. Excuse me. It's cold, yeah. See, I thought when I'd be wearing a mask in the cold, still, I'd manage to not have to sniffle or blow my nose, but no, it's a face warmer to be sure. Like, it's nice, but it doesn't, I don't know. Guess it must be something else contributing to the sniffles. I'll stop when I get to the bottom of the bridge to blow my nose. But yeah, for the Mets, and this year was just kind of sad because I like going to games a few times a year. Whether they're Mets games or not, but mostly, obviously, I prefer going to a Mets game because I have a true rooting interest. But I'd go to 5 or 6, and maybe a couple more depending on someone invites me to go or something's happening or I just want to go to a random game. 2016, the first year I experienced what working in a sweatshop is like. Obviously, it was nothing like a sweatshop, but for American standards, for how they were working me, for how much they were paying me, it felt like it sometimes. Working till, starting at 9, working till 4 a.m. some nights. I remember that April 2016 especially, because there'd be days where I would come home and this is not even during a launch. Launches for pharmaceutical advertising are a big deal because the client wants everything turned around yesterday. And there's always so many pieces because this thing is, the drug has a new indication or it's a new drug, so all this stuff needs to get into the field now. So those times, yes, that might last a week at the most. It'll be really hectic, but generally things are well managed and it dies down. But no, the April 2016 was just a random month for the drug I was on, and the client just had no idea of how much it took to turn some things around. So, and where I was working didn't have any night crew or and now that I think about it in hindsight, I have no idea why, if we were the scheduled person to work late, if we, like, why were we still coming in at 9? That makes no sense to me now. I didn't question it then for some reason. I guess now with hindsight and a little more wisdom, those are the things I think about. But April 2016, was one of those random months where I was working, super late every other day. And there were some days where, like, let's say I work super, if I work till 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, or like Tuesday to Wednesday, at least they had a policy where if you work that late, like, don't even bother coming into the office the next day, which is understandable. But like, if the Mets sometimes had Wednesday day games in April, and I have no ability to sleep in whatsoever, and I was woken up pretty early because also April 2016 they were redoing, like, the gas line in front of my apartment, and being a first floor apartment with my room right on the street level, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, they were jackhammering, and I heard everything to the point where I had no interest in staying in bed. So what else was I going to do but go to Mets games? I lived on the 7 line that year. The Sunnyside, Queens was it was a decent neighborhood to start out my I guess New York campaign, but just, I guess, living alone, or living, moving out from my parents. I don't know what you call it necessarily, but Sunnyside was a nice neighborhood. But it was right on the 7 train line, and I was able to get to Citi Field in maybe 20 minutes, depending on the train or the traffic. So I was like, yeah. And the tickets, of course, that's also something that's going to be interesting to see if it changes with the new regime, is how ticket prices are affected by new ownership and whatever success comes with that. Because when the Mets aren't good, the tickets are really cheap. Like $5. I've gotten in for less than $5 using some ticket sites. But when I want to go to a random Wednesday game where it's mostly school kids or the summer camp kids, why not? What else am I going to do? Just hang out in my apartment, listening to the guys jackhammering all day? So it remains to be seen. Everything's still up in the air. I like how one of the first moves that Steve Cohen made, aside from restoring paychecks and promising to pay everyone the back salaries, so he's doing good by the employees, general employees, which is nice. But one of the first moves was to hire an old face, Sandy Alderson, who was the GM during some thrifty years when he had to be very creative, which is what he's known for. He predates Moneyball by a little. He was the precursor, if you will, the prologue. So it'll be interesting to see what the guy could do when he actually has money. Because oftentimes you'd hear him make excuses and say, oh, this guy returning from an injury is as if we were making a trade. Or, saying that, we didn't go for this player because we have this, random scrub who can fill this position. So it'll be interesting to see what his analytical, but he still made really good moves at times, bringing in some key players. Some maybe not so key, but I liked, especially his trades. He made very good trades. I approved of most of them, especially in hindsight. But it will be interesting to see how he can make moves with more money. Everyone loves money, right? Especially this year when every baseball team lost money because the pandemic. No one was buying tickets. There were fewer games. It's harder to just make money in general. So Steve Cohen didn't have that problem because he wasn't involved in baseball up until a week or so ago. So that it will be nice to see them be able to compete for the top talent and top dollar. On that note, I've made it to Brooklyn. Yes, I'm going to Sahadi's. Yes, I'm getting my olives. I was here not too long ago, to the point where there's some things I still haven't finished. So like, I'm not gonna get corn nuts. I have apricots. I stopped at Trader Joe's before, going over the bridge to Brooklyn. So some of the stuff I might have gotten there at Sahadi's, I already picked up at Trader Joe's, or maybe even I'll pick them up again. If they have a good price and I was stupid for buying it at Trader Joe's, then I'll just buy more. Why not? People are boarding up the election. That's why I envy you, listener, if you've listened this far or at all, and you know the outcome of the election. I don't. So people are boarding up their windows, preparing for Civil War II, the commies versus the boogaloo, or however the sides end up shaking out. It's going to be, if today's stressful, it's just because of the uncertainty. I'd say the next week, maybe longer, who knows? It's just going to be stressful because of actual current events. So I guess on that end, I'd rather know what's happening, so I envy you, whoever is listening. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, because I was buying stuff just because you don't know. Stores are boarding up because they're preparing for whatever mayhem will ensue post-election. I don't know if there'll be much.